topic of today is the development of cultural industry and management of culture and arts in Hong Kong. I'm today's MC, Edmund Lai. From a cultural desert to a cultural hub, Hong Kong has come a long way. What does it take to make Hong Kong an international cultural center, and what is installed for our young people in the future cultural sector? Now, please join me and welcome Ms. Suhanya Raffel for the sharing. Ms. Raffel, please.
We're sitting in our learning hub, our Hoxie, our house of learning, right inside the heart. Because when we designed the museum with the very eminent Swiss architects, Herzog de Meuron, we were very clear that we needed to ensure that one of the primary goals of the institution was also learning and sharing. And of course, learning is two ways. We learn from you, you learn from us. It's circular, it's lifelong. And in a city that has not formal learning on culture in high school, we felt that it was really important to signal that there is real vocational opportunity for the youth of our city to think about what careers there may be in cultural industry. And that infrastructure building is one of the key parts that you will hear today from me about how we've approached this at West Kowloon. Before I begin sort of formally telling you about the West Kowloon Cultural District, I'll give you a little insight about myself. After I finished my degree, I went to London because it was possible for me to go there, and I put my hand up for an internship. And I've never looked back. It's always been my journey, and it took me all over the world, but it was that catalyst that made me think, yes, the cultural world could be also a world that I could find work in and share my passion for the arts. So that long journey led me to West Kowloon and to become the director of M+, almost, 6.5 years ago, coming up to 7 years. I'll be applying for my PR this year. But, it's also about the time it takes to make big infrastructure. Culture is, and certainly the cultural industry, you see it through many layers, from the small grassroots artist-run spaces, university art museums, mid-level museums, and then very large institutions. You need all of them to really build cultural capital into a city. And as you mentioned, Hong Kong has built a very strong muscle around the market, very successfully. We're almost second now behind New York in terms of market, but we need to build the muscle now around public institutions, cultural institutions, because we balance the market. We provide spaces that talk about histories, that value is not just purely financial, but it's aesthetic, it's historical, it's social. So that's what institutions provide, and the market needs us to help give a much greater understanding about how art and design cultures have developed, because M+, of course, is a museum that's dedicated to visual culture of the mid-20th century and into the future. But to take a step back, and the story of West Kowloon Cultural District is a really important one to say, because it really is the most ambitious cultural infrastructure project in the making in the world today. Hong Kong has invested very seriously in building major infrastructure. And when this master plan was agreed to at the Legislative Council, it was Sir Norman Foster's architectural idea that the whole of the ground floor would be pedestrian and the basements would be where transport infrastructure would sit, so that this site then became a walking site. It's 40 hectares of land set aside for major infrastructure development. A third of that site had to be for public open space. Urban park is very rare in Hong Kong. We have many little pocket parks, but proper urban parks are rare. We have wonderful country parks, and it is superb, and we use them deeply, and we need to have that nourishment of open air and nature. But to have urban park is new for Hong Kong, and certainly new in relation to cultural institutions. So what you see here is a group of cultural institutions that are now almost complete. One more to go, the Lyric Theatre, together with infrastructure around HOR, RDE, retail dining, as well as hotel and office. A third of the space is public open space, a third to cultural institutions, a third to commercial development that helps fund the cultural institutions, because no cultural institutions are profit-making. We need some kind of subvention to help us make ends meet. So what is M+? How did we even get our name? What does it mean, M+? It means museum and more. And we got our name when the whole of West Kowloon Cultural District was under development. There was 3 years of public consultation asking the people of Hong Kong, what kind of museums do you want? And they wanted a museum for design, for visual art, for ink, and for moving image. And the advisory group advised the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority to not build 4 little museums, make one big one, scooped up all of those disciplines, but made a proposal that was really for the 21st century, an institution that had to be imaginatively expansive. But the group, the advisory group themselves, couldn't agree on a name. They knew it had to be a museum that had to be more than just a simple museum. And so Freeman came up with the logo of M+, Museum and More. And it's never been anything but M+ since that day, because the potential of plus, the possibilities that the plus offers, is also beyond language. And so we are very fortunate to have had this group of people who already seeded for us the idea of Asia's first global museum of visual culture, of modern and contemporary visual culture. Our audience demographics, 65% of that 2.59 million is aged between 18 and 44. It is a young audience. It's a young and committed audience. So for me, this is extremely exciting. Very important affirmation as we now prepare to open the museum to the rest of the world. What does the collection consist of? It is a foundation collection that is interdisciplinary, so it's across those disciplines of ink, moving image, architecture, visual art, design. It is transnational. We think about what does it mean to live in a city like Hong Kong. Hong Kong has always been porous, open to ideas, people coming in and out. This gives us a very particular character. You know, if you think about what does Hong Kong have? It has people. It doesn't have mines that make, iron ore. It doesn't have that kind of resource. But our resource is people. Our resource is ideas. Our resource is how we then develop that into something extraordinary in the cultural space. So what does M+ learning look like? Because, apart from the content and collections and exhibition programs, we also work very, very closely with our learning teams on lifelong learning. And for us, learning is active, it's participatory. It is not like going to school. We have schools that do that. For us, being in an institution like this, these spaces offer participatory learning, because you learn so much through play and through experiment. We also do digital commissions, We're the only, again, very first cultural institutions to actually commission artists to work online. And we do this because, this part of the world, East Asia, Hong Kong, China, Japan, South Korea, so digitally alert. Many, many people much engaging on just that channel. So we have bricks and clicks, as I say. There's parallel institutions. We are also really interested in how transformation can take place through culture and a cultural ecology. This is possible. I feel it is already happening. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we build into our everyday lives the experience of culture as transforming everyday life. It's learning, it's knowledge, it's pleasure, it's sharing, it's well-being, it's providing a museum space for just being. We have many people who come because they can see and respond to the architecture. We felt, in Hong Kong, mostly people do this in shopping malls. And it should not be only shopping malls. It should be cultural spaces full of objects and artworks made by creative people for us to think about. So that is what the transformation looks like. And we do take our international cultural exchanges very, very seriously. Working with the Hong Kong Arts Development Council, we do the Venice Biennale every 2 years. And we engage with the international community, the museum community, formally through professional networks. I'm the president of CMAM, which is the international board that looks after museums of modern and contemporary art. We really want to amplify and add to the ecology of Hong Kong, because it is by this kind of palimpsest of institutions all working in different ways, it's that rich ecology that gives all of us that sense of excitement and dynamism and cultural capital. And I just know that we have done this over the last decade in really, it's transformed this city. You introduced me by saying we are no longer a cultural desert. Actually, we never were a cultural desert. But now we are palpably not that, because we can see the institutions and we can see the market, and people are coming because of what we are all doing together in this city. And now we are ready for our tourism as we open up the whole of this district, but also the city, for cultural tourism. And we know that we are a very unique east meets west space. It's something that's, you really won't find anywhere else in Asia.
I know that you have extensive experience working in Australia, in Sydney and Queensland, and then you moved to Hong Kong and sort of being one of the pioneers setting up the International Stand-Up Museum in Hong Kong. So when you moved here and work on setting up the project, did you face any hurdles when translating the kind of standards to here? And did you sort of just take your liberty and creating some of new standards? Could you share with us the experience of how to manage?
Actually, whole of West Kowloon is a huge startup. So when I came, there was a group of curators were the first that had been gathered together, and the collection had just begun in 2012. I started in 2016, in mid-2016. But none of the infrastructure had been put together. The development of the design for the museum was totally underway. The competition had been put together, but I had to grow everything, grow the collection, grow the staff, expand on the various disciplines, because it's not just curators, there are educators, collection managers, registrars, conservators, retail, dining team, all of that had to be put together at the same time as building an audience space. So we did a lot of work with cultivating the audience through a whole lot of exhibition work that we did as pop-ups and learning and digital. We put the collection online. We catalogued the collection. We were building the building. So all of these are happening concurrently, putting governance in place. I ensured that we had a M+ board, a collections trust, acquisition subcommittees, all of these coming together with members and patrons programs to help us support the collection expanding. Building youth learning programs, because we knew we had to have a group of ambassadors as part of the opening of the institution. So the first 10 years, it's really when we opened the physical museum in 2021, we were at the end of the first decade of the institution, and we are beginning our second decade. So it was a huge piece of thinking, strategy, and building capacity. It's very clear, for example, that we don't have conservators in Hong Kong, actually in the region, that have the expertise for modern and contemporary material culture. We just don't. There are no degrees. There are very good degrees for antiquities, for lacquer and so on, but not for contemporary and modern. So any conservator who wants to work with our collection, they have to go either to Australia, to Amsterdam, to London, or the US to get those degrees to come back. So one of the big pieces of work that I'm doing now is to establish a postdoctoral science course, working with universities here to build that capacity so that we can see conservation, modern and contemporary art conservation, become a vocation in the city. It is needed. There are so many collectors here who would die to have these conservators come. They fly them in because they're not here. So that capacity building, it's a major piece of work. It will take time. I have to work with universities here to establish accredited courses, because these are master's and PhD courses to become a conservator at that level. But you have to start somewhere. You've got to put a foot down first, and you just start. And we did. And together with an incredible team that is also, about 20% of us are from other parts of the world, but fundamentally Pan-Asian, and 80% are Hong Kongers. So we have a multidisciplinary team that is also multinational. And that, I feel, is also Hong Kong's strength. We have 27 nationalities in M+, and 17 language capacities. That's fabulous. No other museum in the world has that. That is diversity embedded in the DNA of the institution. So it was very big work, and very challenging in the middle of pandemic as well, an economic contraction, to do something of this scale.
So actually these few years, the school has been emphasizing a lot on engaging our community in the arts and bringing arts to them instead of waiting for them to come to us. Is there a way that M+ or West Kowloon is trying to get to the audience instead of waiting for them to come to West Kowloon and look at for the arts in Hong Kong?
Yes, it's that's ongoing work. It never stops. It stopped during pandemic times. What I was explaining, that we used to have a camp, M+ camp, summer camp, where we would have 100 young people come, actually in Sai Kung, and work with 8 educator artists over that period to learn about what it means to think about making creative practice. And that was about bringing people together in another environment and growing a knowledge base. So yes, we do very active participatory learning that takes us out. We used to have the Rover. We had a thing called the M+ Rover, which was a creative studio. And we went out to every single school and community center in Hong Kong in that first 10 years. And then we parked the Rover at M+, because it was time now for all of those people that we'd worked with to come into the museum to understand that this is also their place, it is our place. So we are now developing programs that bring people here, but also take educators out. It is continual, it's circular, and we work with partners on how to achieve that. It's the same across the performing arts, as well as Hong Kong Palace Museum. We do a lot of that. And some of it is also online and digital, because we can then reach beyond Hong Kong to other places. It's very important work, actually, and it's often hidden. You can't see it, but we know it happens.
From your personal journey, how do you feel to from planning it and then to build M+, make it happen today? How is your personal journey? And do you feel have you ever encountered some moments that really special or meaningful in your life?
With M+, definitely. And I think one of the things that I would say is extremely special is how the just immediate community around M+ uses us. So there are a group of ladies that come every morning to do their exercise. They do this badminton tai chi, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's just outside here on the Horizon Terrace between the cinemas and the Learning Hub outside, and it's like a dance. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, are you curating that?" I said, "No. That's just people who use us." And it's also watching the community engage with their idea of creativity as well. So there is a M+ Instagram account, and the posting that happens on that Insta is astonishing, because it's highly curated by just individuals putting their images of their relationship with this institution, whether it's particular collections, a moment, it's maybe with their pets. It's so expansive. So for me, that is very moving, because that means that the institution is more than purely museum. It has become it's a cultural institution that is deeply civic. It is relating to people, and people are using us in ways that we never predicted, but it's so beautiful. Young people, old people, and right throughout the day. And it's also partly to do with the architecture. The architecture invites that. There are these interstitial spaces that are museum spaces that are also outdoor spaces that lead into indoor spaces. This allows a very dynamic relationship for people to manage the museum. And of course, being in a park, it just takes it to another degree.